to people, and people saying hello, 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 hello. Welcome to my little room, and I'm about to do today's masterclass, which is entitled "Don't Just Do Something, Sit There," which actually is quite difficult to say because every time I read it, I read it the other way around. This is not another meditation class. So because some people watching this today definitely 100% do not want to meditate, so we're not going to meditate today, I promise. Okay, I might take you a little bit close to meditation, but I promise we're not actually going to meditate. But if you do feel, as a result of hearing what I have to say today, if you do feel inspired that you want to give it a go, then at the end I will give you some news as to how you can do that. So what am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about science. I'm going to talk about brain waves, in particular my favourite brainwave, the theta brainwave. And I'm going to talk about ways that we can trigger the theta brainwave in without actually having to meditate. So I'm going to teach you some other ways that you can get in the zone without meditating, that is equally as good for your brain health. I'm going to talk about different types of meditation and how that impacts you. And we're going to look at the environment you might choose to meditate in, your body position, and also how to listen to your own resistance to the idea of meditating. What is it about meditating that really you don't like the idea of? I can probably guess, but just listen to yourself and understand why. So before we start, I thought I'd give a very brief outline of my own meditation journey. So I was an only child and a lonely child. I spent a lot of time by myself as a child, and I was a bit of a daydreamer. And I now realise that that's actually stood me in quite good stead. For a long time, as a result of that experience, I wanted to surround myself with lots of people, and I didn't like being alone. But as I've got older, I really now once again cherish time by myself. And we'll talk about daydreaming in a minute, and how actually, although as a child you might have been told off for it, it's actually a bit of a treat for the brain. So I first started kind of meditating in about 1989 when I was an art student in Bath. And I think I very much liked the idea that I might be a Buddhist. And I can remember the teacher that I was meditating with, I was only 19 at the time, but he said that really, in order to be a Buddhist, I really had to get over my ego. And like lots of 19-year-olds, I had a big one of those. And I kind of, credit where it's due, I was aware that the idea of meditating, the idea of being a Buddhist was perhaps in those days driving me, because I thought it was quite cool and groovy. So I kind of put meditation aside really, and the big leap for me was COVID actually. So I should say prior to that, in 2006, I was meditating to some extent when I was on a posting to Iraq and experienced some quite difficulty, but mostly that was around Qigong and Tai Chi and things like that, less time actually meditating. But COVID was the big time that I suddenly had time on my hands that I wasn't filling or couldn't fill, and so I began researching and experimenting with meditation. And I did some big, long, 8-hour long meditation sessions and fully immersed myself. And we'll talk in a minute about whether that's healthy or useful or not. But I thought, lots of things rose up for me, and I did lots of inner healing, and I was a convert to meditation through my COVID experience. And I started teaching it in about 2022. I qualified as a meditation teacher in 2023, and I started running retreats, and I started doing workplace meditation clubs. Those of you who are listening from Gloucestershire, constabulary will know that I may have meditated with you or guided you into meditation. In fact, some of today might be similar to what we did together. Um, Really, my first recordings then that I made on Spotify and Apple Podcasts were last year. So that's my meditation journey. Um, so about me, a little bit about me, I realised very, very late on that I may have ADHD, and that I have what some of you may have is a very busy and a very chattery brain that won't shut up. That is fantastic if you're a creative person because you're full of ideas, but it can exhaust you. So I'm not saying that everyone with that type of brain that chatters a lot has ADHD. It's just one of the things that people with ADHD often have. And I'll talk about busy chattering brain in a minute. I was exposed to a fair amount of trauma in my life, being a survivor of abuse, having specialised in war zones. I've spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and not without exposure to trauma, and had big traumatic events: the sudden death of my mum, and the sudden death of my husband when I was just 21. And meditation certainly helped with those things. But interestingly, it didn't help me when I completely burnt out through work exhaustion. I developed the resilience work really because, as I was saying, I realised that meditation didn't really quite cut it when it came to burnout, and I needed to dig a lot deeper. So meditation is certainly part of what I do, but it's not all of what I do. So let me carry on where I left off. So I was talking about my story, and I'd actually finished talking about me, and I was going to talk about brainwaves. And the reason why it's important for me to have the video showing is that I wanted to talk about the different brainwaves, and I wanted to just show you something that I have. I keep it on my wall. And it's just a reminder for me of the different brainwaves that we have. So you probably can't read it, but it's quite a pretty picture, I think. So at the top here, the peak brainwaves where the activities zigzagging is when we're high alert, when we're very elevated, high performance, stressed. When you talk about people that are elevated, if maybe they're in a mental pressure, muscle tension, can't say that, anxiety, and maybe even aggression. So the next one down is alpha. So alpha is when you're kind of awake, and you're relaxed, and you're maybe being a bit creative, using your imagination, maybe sitting in a comfy chair or having a laugh with friends. It's just a sort of nice, calm state to be in of delta brain waves, because they are responsible for healing and recovery when your brain is in this state. I'll put that down now so I can carry on talking. But the most important thing really is that throughout the day you don't dwell in one state too much, and that you go through all of those states, so that you're balanced, and that will improve your resilience. So let's have a look at theta. I want to give you some top tips. Theta, yeah, of course, with meditation, that's a way to achieve that. But it's something that's quite often missed, theta, in our busy lives. We spend quite a lot of time, maybe in beta, like at work. We spend time relaxing, and alpha, and then we often go straight from alpha, boom, into delta, and we miss out theta. So this is why it's important. So here's a few tips, ways to access theta, and ways to just be quiet without meditating at all. I'm not going to say the M word. So just doing nothing, for example, not meditating, or are you? So just spend some time doing absolutely nothing. if you close your eyes, that automatically tells your brain that theta might be on its way. And just start observing yourself. Become aware of your body and thoughts. And if that's all you do, that will be healthy for you. Just close your eyes. You can lie down if you like, you don't have to. Close your eyes and just be aware of your body and your thoughts and see what comes up. If you have a bit of chattering going on, just allow it. Just allow it. So that's one way you can access theta without meditating or be quiet. So the other time that theta is really apparent with everyone is just as we're going to sleep. You never have these, crazy thoughts just as you're nodding off, and just as you're waking up. Not surprisingly, as you enter delta and as you come out of delta. So as you wake up, actually, the first 8 minutes that you're awake after sleep is really important for your brain function, and often what you do with that first 8 minutes is really important. It can set you up for the rest of the day. So lots of people like to do work on gratefulness, for example, first thing in the morning. It can put them in a good frame of mind. What's the worst thing you can do the minute you wake up? Grab your phone and start looking at doom scrolling at the news. That's probably the worst thing that you could do. You'd be snapped straight out of theta and leap probably into beta, especially if you get angry about what's happening in the world. So sometimes I have recommended this in the past and people have used it. You can put a post-it note on your phone that just says 8 minutes, or it might say 3 things you're grateful for, just to remind you to get in the habit of just staying well away from the phone. So another way you can access theta, I mentioned it earlier, and that is daydreaming, just zoning out. If ever you just sat there sort of a bit tired and you just you just zone out completely and say something like, "God, I was a million miles away then." Well, that is your body telling you and that you really need a little bit of theta time. So if that happens, just pay attention to it. It's happening for a reason. Enjoy it. The other way you can access theta, which I love, is flow activities. So flow activities are things like gardening, for me painting a picture, or just tinkering, things that you kind of just do on automatic without really even thinking about it. It's almost like your subconscious takes over. I know that when I'm painting a picture, sometimes I get in the zone and hours can fly by, and it's just because it's just a lovely feeling. Just when people say I got lost in something, that's what they mean. Other activities are rhythmic activities. So rhythmic activities, and I know several of you that follow my work like running. Swimming, or even gentle cleaning. So or something like folding clothes to put away with the laundry. You could turn that into a really mindful exercise. So something that's repetitive, and that you kind of just get in the zone when you're doing it. I know lots of people do that with running. So that could be that you're entering theta. So you don't actually have to be doing nothing. It's just a state that your brain is in. I'm very interested in this. So listening to the right kind of music and sounds can help you go into theta. So generally it sounds between 4 and 8 hertz. So my new resilience program, the Unbreakable Path, there's a whole section on that, a whole stage on that we do on sounds, on sound therapy and the effect that sound has on your cells. So listening to the right kind of music is important. And actually, if for those of you on Spotify, I have got a playlist which is Caroline Jane, the Resilience Guide recommends. And if you find that playlist, you'll find that there's all sorts of there's just mostly nice, relaxing music, sounds, waves. There's no guided meditation on there at all. It's sort of background noise or sounds to get you in the zone. But there is some frequency sounds on there as well, so that's a good one to look out for. Stream of consciousness. Now, I know that some people like to do this, just write without thinking, or doodling if you're a creative or you're an artist, and just doodling. I was back in the day, they used to used to have your telephone in the hall and your telephone pad next to the telephone. I was, I would always doodle whilst I was just chatting on the phone, and colour in letters or that. When you're doing that, it's actually just doodling is very good for the brain, very good for the theta. See, there's quite a few ways other than meditating. Who knew that doodling could be as good as meditating? Having a bath. I love to have a bath. Candles, nice music, a few bubbles, cheeky bit of chocolate in the bath. Definitely, that is theta brainwave. Same with spa time. When you're most relaxed. It's not just relaxed chatting with friends. It's like a deeper level relaxed. And the other thing that lots of people who don't meditate like to do, and I heard actually a trauma practitioner talking about box breathing, which I'm not very good at. For some reason, I can't do it very well. But if you don't know what box breathing is, you can look it up. But I can explain it briefly. Basically, if you imagine a box, so you breathe in for the count of 4, then you hold it for the count of 4, and then you breathe out for the count of 4, and then you hold that for the count of 4. That's why it's called box breathing. Okay, so in, hold, out, hold. And I mean, it's kind of a bit like breath work. It's a bit like meditation, but if you want to call it breath work or box breathing sounds a bit more, active, doesn't it? But that's supposed to be very good for theta brainwaves if you do that a lot. And listening to a story. Someone with a nice relaxing voice telling you a story. I know people like to listen to calming stories or guided visualizations, that sort of thing. So there's lots of ways there that we can access theta. So it's not all about the meditation. And science tells us that when we're in theta, then ideas bubble up to us, our intuition really sharpens, and our nervous system begins to recalibrate. And it's a good space to process past events and an emotional release. So it has a really good reason. Now, I was interested in this research. Can you have too much theta? I spoke earlier about how I'd sink myself into 8-hour-long meditation sessions during COVID. And in fact, in the past 6 months, I've done something similar. So yes, you can do it too much. So healthy balance is what we're after. If you have too much theta, you can have brain fog. You can be zoned out all the time. You can lack motivation. Your decision making diminishes. So the ideal time for theta activity is 10 to 45 minutes, I'm told. And I found this quote, which was a bit too close to home. It says, "Some people over meditate to avoid life's challenges rather than face and process them. Meditation then becomes an escape and not a tool for growth." So certainly we want to avoid that. So actually this is like, why not to meditate too much? So yeah, I would say 10 to 45 minutes once or twice a day is sustainable and beneficial. And the occasional extended sessions like retreats or day-long silences, they can be healthy, but you need to be properly prepared and supported through that. And very much that's what I continue to do, those day-long sessions, maybe even longer, and also other activities as discussed. So where do you do your meditating or not meditating? I would suggest alone, with no interruptions. So people in my family are very used to me closing the door and saying, right, no interruptions, I'm going to be by myself for the next half hour. And that's healthy and that's fine, and you mustn't feel guilty because it's part of your. Would you feel guilty if you went to the gym for half an hour? No, you wouldn't. So it's the same thing. You're doing a workout for your brain. It's really super important. I would recommend headphones, and I recommend the big ones that go right over your ear to cancel everything out, because that I even with the inner ear ones, if I can hear anything, then I can easily be distracted, and the chattering mind comes in, and I start wondering, like, what was that noise? Is this someone let the dog out, or, you know? So big headphones that go over the ears completely, and invest in a special place if you can, a place that you always go. It could be your bedroom, or you could find the bottom of the garden, or somewhere that is the place that you go. If you struggle in your busy house, or you want a bit of theatre at work, then seek out those prayer rooms and quiet rooms. Lots of workplaces have them, or go for a mindful walk. I used to, when I was particularly stressed out at work, I would actually just go and sit in my car. It's a great little sound capsule, and I'd put on some, some good frequency sounds and give my theta a boost, because I would spend quite a lot of time in high beta, which I knew wasn't good for me. So, I've mentioned sitting down when you meditate. You can do that. You can lie down. You can stand up even. I would say lying down has the potential for you to slip into delta and fall asleep. And for those of you who have attended some of my classes, it is lovely seeing people that are absolutely exhausted fall fast asleep and start snoring, but really is not what we want, if we're really keen on staying and improving our health through access to theta. So, types of meditation. I'm just going to go through my definitions of the different types of meditation. We talked about breath work there, and there's all kinds of breath work that people do, not just the box breathing, breathing deeply, breathing in through your heart and out through different parts of your body. It's quite extensive. I once went to a meditation class where we breathed and became aware of the breath on our upper lips as we breathed out, and so just being aware of your breath in a multitude of ways. And really what you're doing is being focused or mindful then. So a body scan, for example, where you just talk through relaxation techniques and awareness of any tension throughout your body, starting usually from the head going down, and quite often when you're lying down, that is a focused. It's giving your chattering mind, or your chattering monkey, as the Chinese say, giving them it something to do, something to think about. So it's focusing. Some people write focus on a candle, for example. And what does this do for your brain? It's good for your prefrontal cortex. It's good for your memory, your decision making. It's often recommended that people with early onset dementia do focused meditation work. So that's one kind, focused. Another kind which is very different, I think, and that's compassion-based meditation. And that is includes things like gratefulness, but it goes a bit deeper than that. And if you think of something that's actually quite missing from our society at the moment, really, and that's prayer. So even though my family weren't particularly religious growing up, we prayed, and I prayed before I went to bed sometimes, and certainly prayed at school assembly, and we exercised being grateful a lot more than we do today. Today's world seems a lot more set on what we haven't got, and less on what we have got. So I think that does have an impact. In fact, compassion-based meditation does have an effect on your parts of your brain, your anterior insula, which is right in the middle of your brain, and again the prefrontal cortex. Um, this affects things like empathy, um, and positive emotion and self-control. So it's very good for things like people battling with addiction, for example. So that's compassion-based meditation. And all of these types of meditation I do explore with my clients. Um, Another type of meditation is mantra-based meditation. Some people will know this as transcendental meditation. It became very popular in the 1970s, I would say. And if you want to study it now, you'll pay an awful lot of money for it, because it works. It is a whole brain workout, and basically with a mantra, you repeat one word over and over, either out loud or in your head. You may have heard the word Om when people sort of do a joke version of meditation. They always go Om. So Om is a mantra. So it'd be something that's repeated over and over. And the chattering part of your brain, the chattering monkey, is allowed to just run riot and do exactly what it wants and set free. But you just bring, every now and again with the mantra, you bring it back. And if you want to try this, so on that Spotify playlist, I do have an Om song, an Om song that you can practice that with. So those are the kind of focused compassion and mantra. Obviously there's mindful movement and walking, and just being mindful is living in the moment. So whatever you do, you're actually aware that you're here now and you're doing it. You're not thinking of the next thing. And I think that's probably one of the biggest battles of modern life. So if you do want to try any of those things out, see what comes up and see what you feel most resistant to. But I'm just going to give you, this is not meditation, I promise. It's really not meditation. I'm going to give you an emergency calm technique. It's sort of a bit like meditation. But I've used it, and I know people I have taught use this. Emergency calm. So when is this needed? It's needed when you identify you've got stress in your body, or you think you're about to go into stress. So if you feel very stressful, you can feel, your heart rate starts going, or you're about to go into something difficult. So you're going into a business meeting, or you're going to give a presentation, or in my case, I used to use it when I was a 999 call handler, and I had to make sure, check myself, are you ready for the next call? And I used to use this technique. So in my other masterclass, Understanding Stress, we talked about what happens with cortisol and how when you're stressed out, your non-essential functions start to shut down, and you spend too much time in dramatic activation mode. So dramatic activation mode is called your sympathetic nervous system. And if you are too stressed out, then it's stuck in on position. So your sympathetic nervous system is part of your nervous system that kind of works automatically without you having to think about it. So it regulates things like your heart rate, your digestion, your breathing, and your body temperature. Interesting that a racing, chattering mind can also be a sign that your sympathetic nervous system is stuck in the on position. So once you recognize that you are in that state, or you're potentially going to go in that state, you can switch on your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your recovery and healing system. This will start to help your body slow down and start to balance. It slows your heart rate, you can deepen your breathing, it supports digestion, and it promotes tissue repair and your immune system. So let's try it now. It's the only thing I'm going to ask you to do. So we're going to ground our feet. So wherever you're sitting, put both your feet flat on the floor. If you're sitting on a bed when you're watching this, you can put both your feet with your knees up flat on the bed, okay, and ground yourself. If you don't know what this means, there's various ways you can ground yourself. Just start by being very aware of the contact that your feet have with the floor or the bed. For some people, when they ground themselves, they like to imagine roots are growing from the bottom of their feet through and into the ground, all the way to the centre of the earth. For others, they imagine they have very heavy concrete boots on that are weighing them down. So whichever is you, just try and imagine you're grounded, you're connected to the earth. And then take an intentional breath into your abdomen, and your exhales should be slower than your inhales, generally 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 ratio. So you inhale all the way down into your abdomen and then slowly exhale. So if you were in real danger, you would not be able to do this. What you're doing is you're telling your body, I am not in danger, I am not in peril. So it's a way to trick. So the minute you do that, I'd recommend the breathing 3 times. If you're not meditating, you're grounding your feet, you're taking 3 breaths, that's all. But if you do that, it maybe take 20 seconds, then you'll switch off your sympathetic nervous system, you'll switch on your parasympathetic nervous system. I promise you'll feel better. And I know this today because I went to the dentist, and I hate the dentist, and it was really quite painful what I was having done, and I just thought I could feel my heart racing. I was already lying down with my mouth open at this point, and I thought, oh, I didn't prepare for this very well, and I did 3 breaths. And she probably thought I was a bit weird, but she must have seen me just completely relax and just go, all right, I'm going to go with this. So you can use it in all sorts of circumstances. So another hack, if you don't like the breaths, to switch on your parasympathetic nervous system, is to slow down when you eat. And I really need to take this tip myself. So when you're eating a meal, turn off the television and really savour each mouthful, and you'll be sending a strong signal to your parasympathetic system to slow down and do things properly. So hopefully those tips are helpful. I'm sorry that we had to switch computers and switch live feeds in the middle of this, but hopefully I will be able to stitch them together with the magic of technology, and this will be one masterclass. You can find my meditations on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under the name Caroline Jane Resilience Guide, and there are more coming all the time. As I mentioned, that playlist on Spotify, which is called Caroline Jane the Resilience Guide Recommends, for some nice background sounds. So we know there's lots of ways to activate the theta brain waves, and we now know that daydreaming as a child was actually very useful and perhaps a safety mechanism for me. So thank you very much.